We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity. And today we're doing a working podcast on coffee connection. And so we appreciate Teddy being willing to go ahead and lend his expertise in this. And so this is because it's a working session. I'm not sure if Teddy knows where this is going to go. I know I don't know where it's going to go, and that's okay. So we'll take it. And this is to go ahead and kind of gain some clarity maybe on coffee connection and just a whole bunch of stuff. So, Teddy, I don't have any other questions or thoughts. Did you want to just dive in and start asking questions or sharing thoughts?
Um, well, I guess first, nurse coaching, we work from a few agreements. And so I'll share those types of things with you to start with, share about the process. So nurse coaching, not prescriptive in nature. It's more of a we co-create. So whether it's with an individual or with a group of people, we work through questions and pull out kind of where they're at, where they want to go, and proceed from there. So it's in some regards you could say it's like life coaching. We do it from a nursing background and we look at the person holistically. So even though there may be one premise for it, it can kind of work into whatever. So if a person says that they're dealing with anxiety and we want to start with there, then it comes down to maybe it goes into different roles that they do and it's only certain areas. So it can be something that blooms and blossoms as it goes. So some of the agreements that we do is being nursing, they do want us to work from a HIPAA foundation. So what stays here, what's shared here stays here. So I don't speak of it with other people. I keep if I keep notes, I keep them under lock and key, not accessible to other people. I put them in a locked file if I put them on the computer. And then because of what could be shared, I just request that be shared back. So if I share something from my past or experiences, that's respected, not shared around. Is that something that you would agree to?
Well, because it's a podcast, I would say, and it's recorded, this would be public. And so anything that I share in here, it's like it's anybody, everybody can listen to it and go through it. And so I would say the same thing would be true with you. Probably don't share anything that you're not okay with somebody else, because it's an open podcast for whoever. I would say don't share anything if you don't want other people to see it or whatever. I'd
Right.
say, probably good not to share it.
Yeah. And that's where I didn't realize we were doing it under this forum. I figured it would be just whoever the group would be and sharing from there and guiding it that way.
Yeah, and the group is not static. It's not like, it's not like it's right now it could be Elaine and obviously, and it could be Rosanna, Ginger Ann, it could be Ben, it could be Shelley, could be Kenny, could be Luke. Um, but then, Katie in the future, it could be Katie. So it's an ever expanding potentially group of people. It could be other coffee connections around the country or around the world.
Mhm.
Um, with even if it's a recorded, you don't know where it's going to go or where it's going to end up in. And
Right.
so,
And that's why I
so
wasn't anticipating that part of it. So I
gotcha.
just figured it was a Zoom meeting and then we would conduct it as that. So I'll try and mentally shift towards that and go from
Sure.
there.
Yeah.
Um, then another one is you kind of get out of it what you're willing to put into it. So as questions come up, if they're challenging or difficult, definitely your group of people would be in control, so you can choose not to answer questions. However, you may gain the most benefit and insight by leaning into the question and kind of digging to see what is the answer. So you
Absolutely.
kind of get out of it what you are willing to put in, but you are in control. And so that would be two of the agreements as well. Is that something that you think would be appropriate and you guys would agree to?
Yeah, you get out what you put in. Absolutely.
Right. And
Totally. Yep.
then really the fourth agreement is you're agreeing and willing to let me work on coaching you guys. If it goes beyond this, great. If it's just this session and you have an experience and then we kind of go from there. But it's just you're agreeing that I can coach you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So the one of the other main premises that nurse coaching worked from is the person we're working with, whether a single individual or a group of people, they are the experts on them and their lives. And sometimes it's just they don't realize that or have had that trained out of them type thing over their lifetime. And so we work to try and remove those obstacles and barriers just through questioning and stuff. So, and let them find out what their wisdom and their expertise and their direction is so that they can be empowered.
Cool.
So, so the only reason, not the only reason, the reason why I approached you guys was working from the premise that Coffee Connection is there to help support people that want to attend. And so I had a need. I'm hoping it's not going to be a waste of your time. But with when people were asked from in the group and from the leadership as to like what's the purpose of the group, and there wasn't a quick, clear answer. And so that would be one part of it. And then when kind of the one meeting I was at was talked about like, well, how many people do we want here? How do we want to see this grow? And numbers, I mean, they weren't drastically off, but they were different. I mean, one person was happy with 20. Somebody said they'd like to see 40 at the next one. Another person was like, they'd like to see 60 pretty quickly. And so just with those, and it's not, again, it's not a right or wrong. It's and if you go based off scripture in quite a few places would say we're not here to be one-minded, but we are to be like-minded. And so it'd be like just trying to get your team like, hey, how do we get on the same page so that we can have a growth? And what does that look like? And then what venues? Because then when it was asked, like, well, how do we get more people here? It was just kind of word of mouth was about the only way. And so again, if it's a bit of a brainstorm with that, then if we can help with that, then that would be, I guess, a goal of it as well, just to provide clarity for like, what is the group? What do you guys really want to see? And give you guys the confidence about that.
Nice, nice. So Elaine, you're free to jump in and ask questions or share or participate in any way. Um, so you're free to, thanks for being on, appreciate that. And so again, you're free to interact however you would like to interact, Elaine. All right. So go ahead, Teddy.
Okay. I guess one of the first questions I would have is, and if you guys want to write it down, what do you see as being the purpose of the group, of the Coffee Connection?
So I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Starfish and the Spider.
Not heard of it, no.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. It's the premise is a leaderless organization. So what's the difference between a starfish and a spider? Well, if you cut a spider in half and a starfish in half, very different things happen. So with a spider, you cut a spider in half, you get a dead spider. A starfish, if you cut it in half, it actually regenerates, and there are two starfish there, which is pretty cool. And so, it was interesting. I was asking Patrick at the end of today, it's his first time and getting a feel what he liked. He said, I really liked it. I said, great. I said, what'd you like the most? He said, like everybody here thinking, like they're all thinking. Like he said, you go to the Kiwanis, you go to the Rotary, you go to, BNI, you go to groups, and it's like nobody's thinking. And I laughed and I said, well, I think that's because a lot of groups are created, for leaders, for for the leader to go ahead and get what they want out of the group. And so we all come together and we, pursue what the leader wants to pursue. And that's what it is. And so the goal of Coffee Connections is to be a leaderless organization. And
Okay.
so it's not connected into one person or even a group of people. It's where when somebody comes to Coffee Connection, they accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. And so if they're in business and they want to grow their business, they can accomplish that. If they're a homemaker, and they're having stress with their children, they accomplish that. If they want to improve their marriage, they can do. So whenever somebody attends the group, they go ahead and accomplish what they want to accomplish. Because people have never been part of a group like that in their life, like we need to train them on how to do that, And so Patrick, I was saying something about the speaking and stuff, and he says, well, I said, I think the Amish, and I don't know, half of them were Amish or more, ex-Amish, whatever, they were raised Amish. I said he said one of the people at the table, didn't have much to say. And I said, my experience with the Amish is they have a lot to say, they just don't say it. And he said, well, the two ladies or the three ladies, they seem to articulate themselves really well. Like they communicated really well. I said, well, yeah, they, one's had a couple years, one had, 6 months or something like that. And so I don't know that much has changed in the last 6 months or 2 years, like with Elaine. The first time I met her, I knew she had a lot to say. She's just starting to be able to communicate that more. And so I think people have a lot to say, but I don't think people have ever experienced a group like this. So how do you help them? How do you help them like understand this is not like any other group you've been part of? That's something where I'm foggy on. I'm like, I try to explain it, but it's hard. It's almost like people want to come and be told what to do. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. And that's where it does. I feel it makes a lot of sense. Because, and that's kind of like, that's a sense where I was wondering how that fit into it. Because the first meeting, you were like, well, who's leading this meeting? And it seemed like everybody did look to you and still does look to you. And I don't say that in a negative way, but I think like that there's a significant impact. So with it being a very much an intended to be a dynamic group and really a very much paradigm shift in a group process like this, then there has to be some way to convey it to break people out of their format because they're going to have a mental framework for that. So, and
That's
that's kind of
exactly right. Like that is, and we have tried, immensely to do that. And I think we're closer than we've ever been before without question. So we've come a long ways for sure,
mhm,
but I still think we have a long ways to come.
right. So just for again, because I don't know the full background, how long has the Coffee Connection been going and trying to grow?
Well, again, when I don't know that it's trying to grow.
Okay.
Um, so I said to a couple people today, I like, I like, I would rather have, I would rather have two, three, four, five people of the right people there than have 50 or 60 people. I mean, that to me, for my own personal benefit, is just a lot easier. The more people that are there, from my perspective, the higher significance. So, in answer to your question, this coffee connection in this area has been going on for probably 3 or 4 years, I'm guessing.
Okay.
Coffee connection overall is probably 15 years old, maybe.
Okay. Now, is LMI, is that something like, is that one of your businesses or is that an external entity to you?
That is an external entity. It's a nonprofit organization. So it's a
Okay.
501c3 nonprofit.
Okay.
I don't know, probably 18 years ago, a bunch of mostly business guys got together and like we were talking and we made an observation that nonprofit organizations, community based, and my dad's a pastor. So I grew up as a pastor's kid, missionary's kid. So I grew up being a nonprofit organization, a community based organization. You're there to serve and all this stuff. So that's how I grew up. So that's my background. And so the business guys, we went ahead and said, hey, and I think this was 18, might have been 19, 20 years ago. It's been a while. But we said, hey, it seems like these community-based organizations, nonprofits, 501(c)s, other things, they're quick to receive, obviously, the money and the expertise and the time and the resources of business people, but the business people don't get anything back other than feeling good. This is not because the nonprofit doesn't want to help them, but the community-based, they don't know how. And business owners don't know how to do it either. So we said, well, what if we started a nonprofit that went ahead and was focused on helping community-based organizations learn how to bring benefit to business organizations, and they come together and they bring mutual benefit to one another. So that's how Life Masteries, that's kind of the formation. So I was one of those, couple handful of guys that got together and said, hey, this would be a great organization to start. So I was part of the original, I don't know what it was, 8, 9, 10, 8 to 12 people, guys that came together and did that. And so I, over the years, have given a lot financially and time wise. I still give a lot, both to Life Masteries, because I believe in their vision. Like, I believe in what they're looking to impact the world, all 8 billion people. So I love that. And they're not exclusively focused on helping business people and community. They help families. They've got the Life GPS mobile app. They've got a whole bunch of things that they're involved with a whole bunch of causes that they're involved with. So that's kind of, so they're the ones that they're the ones that actually certify the EVAs, the executive virtual assistants. So they're the ones that certify them. So they do a whole bunch of different things.
Okay. Yeah, not knowing all the connection, and I hear different things get mentioned. So I didn't, and you've talked about the 8, 9, or 16 different businesses that you have. So I didn't know if this was a brainchild of one of them or not. Definitely
No,
a
this
component,
was,
but not yours only.
yeah, this is so Synergy, the main of the 9 companies I own, Synergy is the one I've owned the longest. And so that's, I think, 34 years I've owned that.
Okay.
So probably, I don't know, 15 years or ish into that, I'm working with a bunch of business clients and a bunch of other networks and a bunch of other things. And I'm like, hey, I think there's a better way. And so we all came together, put in a whole bunch of stuff to start the nonprofit.
Mhm.
And so that's, yeah, that kind of how it's interconnected back in.
Okay. I think that gives me a bit more background of stuff, so I'm less confused about it. Doesn't mean I won't have more questions eventually. But then to
Sure.
come back to the coffee connection, you've said that you've tried some stuff in the past to um, promote it in that, get it understood as to how the leadership works and how the group could function. What type of things have you done in the past then?
I mean, a whole bunch of things. I mean, we've had, a whole, like there's, it's, I don't know, 15 plus years. So there's a lot of things. We've had kind of chapters, all over the country, some worldwide even. None of them are really going now. So they seem to kind of get up and going, and then they kind of peter out. Um, and so we've done things like in the Chicago area. We started, I don't know, 2 or 3 chapters there. And we would do weekly breakfast. Every week we would do those. And go out for breakfast every single week. Same day, Tuesday mornings, we'd go out for breakfast. And that group would go from anywhere from, 5 people up to 25 or 30 people.
Okay.
Um, and then what we would do is then we would go ahead and have people come in. So once a month, we would have an event, and we'd have people flying in from all over the country that they would come in for kind of where you get together and you do a major event. Major, I mean, there might be anywhere from 30 to 80 people there. So it's not like hundreds or thousands of people, but there were people that would fly in from the East Coast, from the West Coast, from South. They would come in, and we would do a full day event. and then we do something a half day, another half day. So it was kind of 3 days, typically over a weekend. We do the full day on a Friday,
Okay.
and then we do a half day on a Thursday, and then Saturday we might do a half a day, breakfast, something casual, those types of things.
Okay.
Um, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Not fully. So to try and when people attend, so one, what I'm hearing is because initially I thought it was like kind of business owners, small business owners, large business owners from the Amish and English communities. You're trying to bring them to kind of connect, just get to familiar and maybe share their business type thing that way. But it's not really intended to be like a business only focus. If people are having questions or having struggles, like you said, somebody's struggling with their kids for a certain thing, it would be, well, now maybe some people can come alongside and be kind of like an iron sharpens iron and be supportive, kind of all encompassing, not just business related.
Correct.
Okay. And so then, and I get the sense of what you were saying from the very first meeting when you were trying to find out, like, well, who's leading this? How do we start this? And, kind of again, people looked around because it is a paradigm shift. If it's kind of, you want it to be pretty organic, to use a pop term right now. But you want people to have ownership of it, not just be based on tenure. How long do they come? But now I feel like I've come 5 times. I can ask a question. It's like you want people to be able to show up once and, hey, what's your need? So, and that's where I kind of had a sense with that. I just didn't realize how encompassing you guys were. And that's where trying to find a way, like, can you get it so that either prior to people have a way to get the questions funneled to leadership so that maybe we can say, hey, if we're going to, kind of disseminate the leadership, then can we get the questions and be like, hey, here's questions that came up. If you feel like you have an answer for it and you put a couple copies of it type thing, then pick it up and, hold it up every now and then, show people so that if it applies to them, then they could do it. Or you can have the person have the question and you just mingle, you read it and be like, oh, well, maybe that's something I can help with. And whether it's that way, it's not directed at any one person in particular.
Yeah, and so this is the thing, you know, um, so my personality as a driver is big. So 8 billion people. So okay, I'm gonna do that. So that's large, huge. My analytical part is I want to do it right. Like, and so one of the challenges I have, one of the biggest challenges I have is that when people, say, hey, I have a need or this, and they go around. I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying, I mean, this is me, but I'm not saying it's a positive part of me. So don't get me wrong in thinking, well, Mark thinks this is good. I don't honestly know if it's good or not, but it's me. I know I have this philosophy, and that is that most of the time for me, those type of things are not effective. They're superficial, surface types of responses that actually could go ahead and go very, very wrong. Um, Now, most of the time, fortunately or unfortunately, if I'm a cynic, I guess I would say, fortunately, most of the time, people don't listen to the advice and don't follow it. But I think that's good because I'm not sure that the advice, I mean, you being in the medical profession, I think you might understand what I'm saying more than the average person would say. Like when you're prescribing stuff, you want to make sure it's right. Like it has a lot of side effects and there's a whole bunch of different nuances. And so fortunately, again, this sounds condescending or it sounds arrogant like the things I say will sound a lot to people. And if they just became curious and say, what do you mean by that? They'd say, oh, well, he's really actually thought about this a lot. But the it's like people like Patrick, probably that's the best compliments anyone's ever given. I've ever heard about a coffee connection is when Patrick says everybody's thinking. And so like I want when people come with some type of intention, and then it's your responsibility. It's not the leadership responsibility. It's not the organization. It's not Life Masteries. It's, you come. for a purpose, a reason, and then it's your responsibility to walk out with whatever you're going to walk out with. Like it was either the second or third agreement. Like you put in what you're going to get out. And um, so I don't know if any of that. So I'm a bit sensitive, and I tend not to like just popcorn, type of responses. Well, here's a problem I have. Well, this is my input, my input, my input, my input. And it's like, I'm not saying it's wrong. I personally don't like to be a part of that, because doing what I've done for as long as I've done it, like when somebody says something, like we have every Friday we have hangouts at my house. And so some of the, people come over here and talk business and stuff. And Luke went ahead and we kind of had it, and Marcus was there or Mark was there, Dumais and Pierre. I mean, we had, I don't know, 15 guys there and gals there. And Luke said, well, I want to get more business or something like that. And they just went around, and I'm like, they don't know Luke. They don't know the business. They don't, and it's not like their business. It's not like their advice was wrong. It just was superficial. I felt it was superficial and surface with no meat that Luke's not going to follow up on. He may feel good. They may feel good. Like he got input. They gave input. But is there any change? If there's not change, there's not growth. If there's not depth, I'd prefer, for me personally, I'm like, I would prefer not to be part of that kind of a group. And so do you know are you aware of the difference between a networking group and a mastermind group?
Probably not fully, at least not by your definition.
Yeah.
So
So my definition is the difference is a networking group is where we get together. You give me a fish, I give you a fish. We both walk away happy because we got fish, referrals, leads.
mhm.
And so, that's that. A mastermind group is, from my perspective, is far, far different. Where for business owners, it seems to me that every business owner at some point or another wants their business to run without them. And most businesses are not able to do that. And so, from my perspective, a mastermind group is coming to say it's not to exchange fish, it's not to get a lead, it's to go ahead and look deeply into what can I do to get my business to run without me so I can do what I was put on this planet to do, which some of that may be owning my business, running my business, those types of things, um, some otherwise. And so the superficial and surface responses are the things that I think either often are not valuable, they're word lettuce or whatever. They're really not valuable to people. Or if people actually take what people say seriously, they could actually be detrimental because the person who's giving the advice, it sounds like it's good advice, but it could actually hurt the person. So I don't know if that's kind of jumbled up. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
I think at least a little bit it does.
okay.
Um, so I guess part of it part of me says, so one of the big things is it can be somewhat an analysis paralysis, or there's all these what ifs. So I guess you still come back to a question of, okay, so well, how do we communicate without having any sort of a demonstration or trial of ways to get that done? How do you start showing the intent of, it's not a specific leader, it's a show up and see how connections go to see for your answer.
So I think what needs to happen is it needs to be condensed like like alcohol, like it needs to be distilled down into something tight. And then I think somebody needs to start out who can communicate that clearly. But even then, when they communicate it clearly, understanding people have never experienced something, so their heads are spinning and they're like, they don't even know because they've never heard it before, so they've never processed. So I think we need the same person at least for a few months, communicating 3 to 5 minutes at the beginning to go ahead and share that. And with the new people, first time attendees, and everyone's exposed to these 3 minutes, let's say.
Mhm.
Then I think what needs to happen is it's almost like the new people need to go ahead and be put it onto a table, a separate table, I think. And then they need to go ahead and have the action card. So that action card is something that always seems to have worked. It's absolutely magical on how it seems to go ahead and get so much information in a very short period of time. And so the new group of people have somebody, and that person who's leading that table, that group, they're really good at what they're doing. Like they know how to read the cards, they know how to give input, they know how to answer questions. And maybe that goes on for a half an hour, and then they're released and they can go to the other tables or whatever. It's my thought. We haven't found the person who can articulate the beginning, and I haven't found the person or people who can orientate the new people. So by and large, I think Coffee Connections is always, over the last 15 plus years, people come and like it. I mean, they really do. They come and say, that was amazing. I'm not sure what was amazing. It's just, I've never been. So they like it, but often they don't come back. And it's like, to me, that's a weird thing. Part of me is like, how do you like something? How do you like something and not come back?
Right.
Like, it's just weird to me. And so that's what I think, like Patrick said, like having somebody like Patrick, having someone like yourself, having somebody that can be at a table that can involve everybody and make sure that people are getting something significant. If they're not getting something significant from it, they're probably not going to come back. They might feel good. They might say, wow, this was really fun. This was really good. But you've got people when they schedule vacations around coffee. Like if people are scheduling their vacations around Coffee Connection, not to go ahead, and there's a handful of people that are so committed to it that they schedule their vacations around Coffee Connection to make sure they just won't miss it ever.
Right. And one of the vacations was destination to look for a place to plant a Coffee Connection.
That's the kind of thinking. Like that's exactly right. And so the challenge is Life Masteries has put out a lot of time and money and energy for Coffee Connection, like a lot. And 97% of what Life Masteries does, they don't charge anything for it. Like they just give it away.
Okay.
That makes it hard for Life Masteries to sustain or grow because it doesn't have that consistency, and so of money coming in. And so how do you do that? So that's something that Life Masteries has struggled with forever, is like a lot of nonprofits do, is how do you go ahead and generate money? you know and so they have some that are really committed and they give a lot, but by and large, it's been hard for them to have a consistent economic engine.
I bet. Especially if you're trying to be, again, to keep, I mean, it's a kind of a pop word, whatever, but promote like a paradigm shift in thinking. And my guess is it's probably not just on Coffee Connection alone. I bet you a lot of what they offer is just a complete paradigm rethinking, retooling of stuff.
Right.
So, and I guess going back, do you think it would be, I feel it's different from the outside looking in, having the different tables set up. And I guess the thought, do you think it would be better having new people come in and sit at a table where it's other new people? Especially if you do have, even if you just start, and I would say it'd probably be worthwhile by the sounds of it, if that was your idea, having somebody at each table to kind of initiate and then say, but and just emphasize the focus of the goal is like everybody that shows up has an ownership. So feel encouraged to next time. So if you and I were sitting at the table, and the first time we had that conversation, then the second time it would be, if you have kind of a format to the questions that can allow it so that you can pull out, each person has a chance to pull out, kind of, do you have the kind of the way I look at kind of stuff? Do you have like a stressor, an anxiety, a pressure, a fear, whether it be business, home, life, personal, that's going on that you would like to share that we can maybe give a chance to listen to you so you can be heard, and maybe we can get a little bit of information on it, and within like a 5-10 minute period of time we can have enough, and maybe you just know that there's support. But at the very least, then you've had the potential connection for somebody, or it's like, hey, I really think you need to talk to, for the people that know the other members of the group. And then you have the coffee connection that carries on into the rest of the life and not just isolated to the Saturday.
Yeah, and I think that there's a art and a science. Like Jemima's, she came and she's from one of our clients, and they're an accounting firm, and her husband came, and he did, he had the action card, and he filled that out. And Rosanna, my wife, she went over and kind of explained everything to him. And it took a while for Jemima to get me to come over because I'm talking to this person and this person, this person. But finally, I get over there and I explain it to him. And he said, and she, so Rosanna, she's very familiar with it. She understands it and all that kind of stuff, but she doesn't like explain it like I do. And he said, if you wouldn't have explained, if you wouldn't have come over and explained it, I wouldn't have come back to the coffee connection. Now, his wife had to kind of twist his arm to come in the first place, and he hasn't been back since, even though he said, so I think a lot of times people are stuck, like they're pretty happy with their lives and they don't know what their lives could be. Like they might be in not so good of a marriage, but they've become accustomed to it. They've become familiar with it, or their career or their business or whatever. They've become where they accept things as they are. Um, and so that's the thing that's a little bit, foggy. I think that, I think that now that we have the Thursday podcast, um, it's 6:30 on Thursdays. If people can plug in, like people get pumped up, like being an international speaker and author, I'm trained and experienced to go in and get a group jacked up, like, motivated, inspired, but they don't follow through. Like people go to seminars, workshops, they get jacked up, they're excited, they're motivated and inspired, and then they don't follow through. For me, I don't want to go ahead and do that. I don't want to get people jacked up, excited, motivated, and then not have them follow through. The follow through is where the life change comes in, is not being excited and motivated and inspired. And so I think getting them into a podcast, a mastermind, a virtual group where they just meet together for 30 minutes, a week. And I think that then complements, but getting people to actually care. So there's, the, and again, like if like you can redirect that number, like it's maybe different than, um, it's maybe different. So you're free to interrupt me if you want. If I'm not going where you think we need to go, interrupt me with another question or rein me back in or whatever it is.
Right. I don't, again, I don't expect any answers. I don't have an anticipation of it. I just ask a question, find out where it leads. And if it provides a different question, or if I got to do a clarifying question, then I do that. So,
Got it.
but I guess that's the thing, like we, and I don't know, because it sounds like with big ideas and big changes, It's what do you think the smallest way to start initiating the knowledge of that change, the change in those expectations, and how do you start? What's the smallest way to let the newcomers know and people who've been there, myself like 2 or 3 times now, and to know like the empowerment of the group, the power of the group comes as we share with each other, the good and the bad, what's gone well with you, and what did you find, like with Bill, how he had you had mentioned about his approach with his clients. And so I would say, what would be the smallest way, a direct question, changing it to say, if it's a month of one person leading the 3 or 4 different tables and each one has their leader, and then, it's like, hey, now you get the chance to help lead it, or what do you think the flavor of today should be like? And you set the tone. Do you have something to share? And maybe they come with an article, and then you just talk about the article and the application of that.
So
Like
the
the one that Elaine had today. I thought that was really, really good. Um, I didn't speak up. It kind of quickly went to something else. But with that, it's be like, just if you have the article to, somebody, people, or you could say maybe people want to talk about that, so that that can be there. Again, I kind of wonder if people get lost in the changes and then it's well, but what's in it for me? And that's not clearly made. Like, it sounds like that might be a foundational thing, is how do we clearly get it so that people feel that ownership and are encouraged in that ownership of the group itself.
Right. So the action card, so this here, who's their ideal lead? So that's obviously focused on business people. And then my biggest challenge in any area of business or life would be, so the biggest challenge, or we call it the BC, reveals pain. So people are motivated on two things: avoiding pain and gaining pleasure, with a higher motivation to avoid pain. They'll just do more to get out of pain than to gain pleasure. The third one is, if anybody could help you in any area of your life, what would you love help on? And sometimes can be the same, but often it's going to be different. It's not always, but it's often going to be pleasure. It's something. The biggest challenge will be pain. This is pleasure. This helps to give whoever is working with them context to understand, if the person's trained in personalities, this reveals like everything, like how they think and why they're thinking. And so it gives context. And so if somebody says, my biggest challenge is I have no time, well, each of these different personalities are not going to have time for very different reasons. So if we don't incorporate the personalities into advice, it's not going to be very effective. Um, if you could change one thing about yourself, what would that be? So that's leading and moving to vulnerability. And then, 1 to 10, this, and then income goals and stuff like this. So if somebody fills this out, so the first time attendee, maybe somebody talks to them for 5 or 10 minutes for a little bit. So maybe they talk to them for a little bit, give a little bit, maybe explain what the card's about, and then fill out the card. If somebody's trained in how to respond, the amount of insight that you have on this person based on these 7 questions is substantial. So I
Right.
think the action card is a great base. And then how do we handle that? Does it get handled individually? Does it get handled as a group? Those types of things I think is going to be, helpful.
Yeah. And I can see the benefit to the tool. That is for sure. Because when Luke was reading it, interpreting it for me, I was just like, I mean, that was really
Yeah.
quite accurate, I thought. So it's tough not to believe in it. I guess my question, let me try and think of what my question will be from there, is that requires special training to be able to utilize it. Um,
I mean, yes and no. So it does a little bit. This here on the so here is the Life GPS. So Life Masteries has this as a mobile web app, so it's accessible both on the phone or on the computer, either way. And so there's 27 people that are, in here that have joined this group. And so this maps out all their personality. So if I wanted, it knows that it's me that's logged in. If it was you, you'd log in and you'd have yours. And so I'm going to be a driver analytic personality. I could go ahead and click on this person here, Luke. So he's almost the exact opposite of me. And I could compare his personality, mine. And then there's 1 minute videos that would, I could understand myself if I looked at myself, or I could understand Luke, who's totally opposite of me. So Life Masteries have been working on for a long time. The ability to have the technology actually do with you what Luke did.
Mm.
And then there's communication topics. And so, or there's topics. And so you have a channel. So anybody can have, a channel. And then you have different groups. And so, and in the groups, you have topics. So in communications, this stuff is brand new. Like this stuff is hot off the presses and it's crazy.
Mhm.
And so there's a kind of a 20 minute, I think, 12 minute. So here's like a 12 minute, podcast on communications. But what we know is that when people attend, when people watch a seminar, workshop, they watch this podcast, people learn things they really don't need to learn. They learn things they shouldn't and don't learn things they should based on their personality. So what we can do is, if we know their personality, we can actually help them before they go and watch this. They can go through 2.5 minutes and they can go ahead and this will coach them, give them insight based on what they're probably going to miss if they go ahead and go through the podcast.
Mhm.
But I haven't seen any technology anywhere in the world that's like this. So maybe there is, I don't know. I haven't seen it. I'm pretty familiar with technology, and others have said the same type of thing. So this here gives the ability for somebody, if they put this and register this in, they could go ahead and click on it. There could be a 1 minute or a 2.5 minute video that would actually communicate what Luke communicated. So they have technology that can go ahead and clone that, what Luke is doing, if that
Um,
makes sense.
yeah. Um, so again, as an outsider coming into it, it's a lot overwhelming.
Yep.
And so if your goal is to have people coming back, would it be control? And I don't want to use it, have it misconstrued. I don't think control that way, but have it be a timed release of the different things. So if I
Like an
come in,
IV.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's a lot of all this different stuff, and then that newness, as well as the group dynamics, to allow those to happen. But as you know, if you have 4 new people and you have 9 people that are there total, that means over half the group has no idea about most of this, and that can be overwhelming. And if the goal, from having gone through quite a few different coaching sessions and stuff too, so to the questions you ask are designed to pull people in and be impactful, but it takes repetition of contact for them to feel safe in those environments. And I think you can do it. I think I came in a little bit different, looking to be like, let's find out about it. I'm looking to connect and stuff like that. And I think other people do. But if it's too new, too overwhelming because of all the differences, so what would your group look like if you took a period of time and focused on just really developing and getting people to feel connected and welcomed, and then introduce the differences bit by bit, so that something like the personality test is a little bit down the road. If by their second, third, fourth time that they're there, they feel like they have more of a connection. So finding out the similarities and allowing them to see through just communication, what do you think the group would look like, trying to focus on the connections first, then all of this to add the depth once the attendance is happening.
So my interpretation of my experience, is the personality is the most powerful part to connecting with people and hooking them or getting them to attend or whatever. They absolutely, it's amazing how fast it can accelerate it a lot. And so by and large, people who attend these things are not looking for relationships. They're just not. If they do, they probably need to get a life. They're just not. What they're looking for is they're looking for something that's going to help them get something that they want, but they may not even know they want, but they're looking for something. And if you don't go ahead and really nail that right away, they're not going to come back again. And so the personality stuff, from my perspective, and part of it's the occupation. So for 15 years, I didn't have the internet, I didn't have email, I didn't have Zoom. All I had was a phone, and I had to sell people all around the country in coaching and business coaching, sell business people that are not local. Like, I'm going to talk to you, over the phone for an hour a month or maybe a half an hour a week later on. And I had to do all of that. And so I learned how to go ahead and connect with people in literally, 30 seconds, then a minute, or then 3 minutes, and then 11 minutes, and then 16 minutes, and they would go ahead and buy. And then so I would develop connection really fast with people, really, really fast. And, that's what I've done for the last 35 years, 34 years. And so that's where it gets to be. Life Masteries has too much IP. It's just massive. I mean, people that are world leaders of worldwide companies have said that they've never seen anything like it. Peter Miles, who's the past president of BMW, he said, Mark, the stuff you guys have done, like with Life Masteries and Synergy and all that kind of stuff, the stuff you guys have done, he said, if you went ahead and put all of the 100 Fortune 100 company executives in a room, none of them would understand it. It's so far beyond their comprehension, which is both good and bad. It's good because they've never seen or experienced anything like it. And these are top level executives. It's bad because, how do you get people, ramped up? And maybe based on personalities. So most networking groups will tend to attract, um, um, the amiable personality, maybe the analytic,
Right.
and the expressive. So they tend, the ones that they have a hardest time attracting is the driver, because the driver is not going to mess around with feeling good. Driver's not going to mess around with, they tend to be very successful in business, and they don't want to hang out with people. They don't want to hang out with people that, aren't driven and accomplished and get down to business. What are we going to do? If they don't accomplish a lot fast, you're not going to have some of those really high end people that can really move things in crazy ways. So
Okay.
I don't know if you've got a hard stop. We'd scheduled an hour, so I want to be respectful of your time, Teddy. Thanks, Kenny and Luke, for being here. Appreciate that.
Yep.
I
I'm
don't
I'm
know.
okay continuing. So
Okay, so I've got up to another maybe half an hour. So again,
okay.
it's up to you. I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, well, I want to pay that respect back too. So is the Coffee Connection, is it a networking group or a mastermind group?
It's really a mastermind group, but that doesn't mean you're not going to give each other fish. It
Right.
doesn't mean you can do that, but would you rather go ahead and go to a group that gives you one lead, one lead a month? Or would you rather go to a business wise, financial wise, would you rather go to a group that gives you one lead a month and you have a 10% sales closing ratio? Or would you rather go to a mastermind group that goes ahead and never gives you a lead, but they help you take your 10% sales closing ratio, turn it into 20% sales closing ratio? And um, so it's really more of it's really a mastermind group, but people will tend to attend, they'll tend to, like business owners, many of them that attend mastermind groups, they're starving. Like they're starving and they're looking for quick business fast, and that's what they're looking for. And if they
Right.
don't find leads where they can do business, they typically often are not going to stay around. The question is that good or is it bad? I can see the good in them not staying around, and I can see the bad in them not staying around.
Right. And I mean, with that thought and with what you said not too long ago about people are, if they're going to come for the problem, they're going to come for the problem. They don't have time to come for the other visiting. And I guess that's where if it's known as to what you have to offer, and when they see examples in action, it's like, I mean, it really sounds like it's structured to be a one-stop solution, but that even doesn't get communicated. That's why I feel like some clarity for what's the purpose. Do we want people coming back? I mean, from what I hear from your words, where it's like if people come back for a problem, then once they get the solution, there's no reason for them to come back. And again,
Well,
that's why.
the challenges with human beings is once they get the solution, trust me, they're going to have other problems. So they're going to come back. People are not into one solution and that's it.
Right.
They just aren't. So they're going to come back over and over again. If you can solve one problem, really solve it, they'll be back again because they have other problems.
And I won't disagree with you on that. But without a connection, sometimes it takes that connection for that problem to come out. And so you're missing. And what I'm saying is again, this is the clarity, and this is where having the control, because I think people are going to come who want to, and then once they start seeing the benefit of it, but if they don't, I mean, the first time through, if they don't see the benefit, then it's just like, well, I don't know. And if it's not clearly communicated the purpose of the group, or if you don't have anybody what their problem is, say it's somebody who says, I got a problem with, how I market my place. But if nobody is deemed like a marketing expert, then, and that doesn't get known, then they're like, well, but why would I show up to the group? And if I show up to the group and it's not like, hey, you're here for a marketing, how do you pull the questions out and the needs out if they don't answer the paper? Because like I said, some of my experience has been is sometimes it takes repetition of contact before you get people to open up. If they're like, like the way I was invited was, hey, we got this group, we just get some Amish business and some English business. We try and get them together, get to, know each other. And that's kind of about it. And it's just like, I'm like, well, let's see, maybe it's like a networking thing. I had no idea. And so then I'm not going to know to come with like, what's a specific thing that I need help with? And is somebody going to be here to do it? And are they going to try and sell me a program, or what's the cost going to be? And so that's where it's like, there needs to be some clarity in what are you trying to offer and how do you communicate that? And if the goal is to get people back, you might find that you're surprised at that finally the problem comes out after a fourth or fifth visit. If it's deemed as it's a fellowship, how do we support? And they start seeing you support this person in this way. And they're like, oh, okay. And they see this person supported in this way. And they're like, okay, well, now I feel free to do it. But it's like an AA meeting. Not everybody shows up and is just like going to share what's going on right away. And so that's where I'm like trying to help with clarity. Like, what is the goal? What's the process that you have for that? And if it's a different way of thinking, because we can get bogged down in what our experience is and miss like what's being offered. Because having rapport, finding the connection and those similarities, that's what's going to start disarming the people so that they want to keep coming back, and that their wall now is gone so that they can ask the questions. and then they finally get to know somebody, because otherwise it's like, well, I don't know who I need to talk to. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to say, like, if you led by example, have the different people involved with it, lead a table and just show and have it pull out, or if they know that they brought somebody with a specific issue, then you can do that. Because for you to pull in earlier about, maybe one of the parents having trouble with their child, it's like, well, that's not a business thing, so I wouldn't even know to bring that up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, everything you've shared, I get it, understand it, have thought through it. So yep, I'm right there. So there's nuances. So I will be prejudiced based on my personality on what works. You will be prejudiced based on your personality and what works. Kenny and Luke and Elaine, we all see the world through our eyes. A lot of people don't understand their prejudice. They just think, well, this is how I see the world. And it's like, well, you see the world that way. Other people see it in a very different way. So understanding, like, like conceptually everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, I agree with all of that. How to pull it off, that's brutally hard. I mean, it's just really hard to do.
So again, going back to one of the questions then, what's one small way that's different, that don't prejudge an answer for people, that you could try and do that just to be like, is this the pebble drop that takes and causes the ripple across the pond of change?
Right? That's what we're hoping that you'll be able to come up with.
But I don't, this is, again, this is where I don't come up with what the answer is. I'm asking you guys to stimulate your thinking as to what is one thing that you have not tried, or one thing that you didn't try enough, that maybe you could try and be kind of to have the impact that you guys are looking for. Again, because if I've asked and trying to get, it sounds like networking, then no, it's a mastermind, but then we're bringing up stuff that's not business related. It's like some clarity on that end of it needs to be done, and that's not a clarity that I do. It's like, because I'm not involved on the leadership of the group, and so it'd be like, and then, but how would you go about doing that? Because having some of your leaders equipped to set at the table and be able to just start by, having a list of questions, and it's not like just icebreaker questions.
Well,
And
we
so
have that already. That we have. That system's in place and it's working really good. So that's the action card. That's in place. It's working really, really good. Really
okay,
good.
okay, because I haven't heard any of those brought up at any of the meetings I've been at.
What do you mean brought up?
Like, if somebody's expressing like who would be my ideal lead and why, or my biggest challenge in any or my business, like I've not heard somebody say, well, so and so's had this challenge in their business, and how
Right,
can we, so how do you help them? So that's why I'm like, you have that, but I've not seen that in use in the 3 meetings I've been at.
right. So that's pretty interesting, isn't it, everyone? No? Yeah, maybe.
Um, sorry, I'm
Right.
out of it. I'm not,
Right.
probably shouldn't even be on here. I can't think.
Right. It's been a interesting day for sure. Yep, I'm with you. So, um, other questions, Teddy, that you have or thoughts?
Uh-uh. Um, no, it's like, if you guys would like to meet again, we can try. If you think that this isn't going to be a fruitful direction, then I'm okay with that.
Interesting. Um, so I think that for me, um, for me, anything and everything I do is fruitful. So if we were to meet again, it would be fruitful for me because everything I do is fruitful. Because if I'm going to do it, it's going to be fruitful. Otherwise, why do it? That probably is going to take a lot of work, but that's okay. That, like you said, agreement 2 or 3, whatever that one was, work at it. And so I'm fine with meeting again. for sure. So I'm tracking, when you went ahead and said at the beginning, you said, I'm the expert or we're the expert. Um, like, I don't disagree with people because I think disagreeing with people is arrogant. I have a different vantage point. So when you said that, I'm like, I can see your vantage point. I'm not disagreeing with what you said, but I have a different vantage point than you do on that, at least what I heard you communicate, which maybe is what you meant to communicate or maybe not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we function from. Whether people have not been given baseline information and it's a matter of pulling out through the creative process of this question and answers, that they have that ability to have an impact of something. Maybe life has just beat it out of them and maybe they knew it and got lazy about it. And so we function from as a group, you guys have the answers within you, and sometimes it's just the questions remove you or your roadblock or your, again, if we have a mindset that needs to be changed, then it's like, okay, well, how can you change that mindset? What's a step that you can do towards a change of that? And then that mindset shifts, and all of a sudden things can click for you.
Right. So, Mark, what's your perspective if it's different? That's a good question. I like when people are curious. So, my perspective is um, that the person who's interviewing or coaching or whatever it is, um, they may go ahead and see something that I don't see or understand. And so I think coming in, that's a humble perspective, like I'm the expert. Okay. But a humble perspective is, and I'm going to get a lot more from any of our time together by being humble. I just will. Like, well, what are some, what are concrete things that we can do? And you came up with a whole bunch of ideas. And it's like, okay, so how is that going to be executed?
But
How is that? Sorry, go ahead.
no, and that's why the process be, maybe we get the pebble drop in this meeting. And again, even if we didn't have another conversation, maybe you still carry that pebble drop, and in a couple of days, a week down the road, all of a sudden somebody has an aha moment from because one of the premises that I work from personally, and use it for whatever term you want me to use. I feel like if you pose a question to the spirit, to God, to the quantum, to the universe, however you want to put that, then give it time to percolate because the answer is going to come back. So my challenge to you, for you guys, would be then is, so the question is, if you just were to sit down and just ask, don't try and answer, don't think of anything right now. How could we try and convey well, for one, how can we clearly decide what the purpose of the group is? How can we clearly convey to other people what that purpose is? And then how can we utilize what's coming in to act out and be active within the group at that time so they can see that purpose in action? And so with the purpose of the group of, if it's hey, our goal, and to me, the goal is kind of metaphysical. We want to attract people that have a need, who they want to come to the group. That need is going to be able to be expressed, and then they're going to be able to get the answer in that session, that time there, and then be able to go back to their life and have it be applicable and impactful so that they could then have benefit to their business. And then as things occur again, then they come back and have that same process occur.
So
But
do
that's a
you,
lot of metaphysical. So how do you get to convey that? So the question would be is, how can I let somebody who's now attending know they're empowered within this group, and this group has the chance we could answer their question and solve their problem and have it be meaningful and impactful to them? And
so
that would
Kenny,
be,
Elaine, Luke, do you have any questions or thoughts?
No,
Guess
I
one
don't.
thought I would have is when we do the action cards, they are based on um confidentiality that we don't share their personal information. Now we
Yes
could
and no.
present the
So that's a yes and no, right, Elaine?
yeah, because there's questions that we can present as a group.
Right. And when I go ahead and you guys give me and say, hey, Mark, can you take a look? I'm cautious about what's on that card and how I'm cautious and considerate about what they're saying on that. Like, do I present that? Sometimes the whole table will hear what I'm doing with that person. And so I have to be careful about what I say. So I see that card. So, in a way, excuse me, in a way, absolutely, totally, you're right. We're careful, very careful with information. In another way, we're not saying we're not going to share this with people. We're not really telling them anything, you know? And so we haven't had, there's been a few people that have resisted the card. I think the two biggest things that I would take away is like, and we've been working on this for a number of months, is how do you get a strong intro? And then how do you go ahead and get new people at a table and give them an orientation? So those are the two pieces. And so that intro, we started with Irvin, and he did a pretty good job when he did it. But it, whatever. So he's not able to be consistent. So giving that presentation, that first presentation, um, like it sounds easy. I think it may sound easy what Teddy's saying. It's not. It's brutally hard. And so it's not only the words that's said, but it's the heart, it's the physiology, it's the energy that somebody's sharing that with. And so who do we have in the group that could do that? So we need to have, that intro, yes. And then we also need to have the person to do it, because not everybody can do it. And it's going to take, it may take 6 months to a year for that person to get really, really good at doing it. Does that make sense to everybody or not so much?
Yeah, I think so.
I guess part of me would also consider, like, think of it again. I have different thought processes too. So, scripture would say, be ready in season and out season. So this is one thing where it's like you can have the responsibility in that role kind of default to somebody, but then when they're not available, anybody should be able to step into it as well. And that's where you should develop yourself to that point. So if the for the coffee connection from a sales point of view, it's like you should know your stuff so that you can do that as well. So as you see Irvin, is that who you said?
Yeah.
So as you would see them, it's like, you get better at sales as you work through different processes. You get it from modeling somebody, so you can model Urban as he does it, but you can also make that your own flavor. And it's how am I going to respond to this event, or how am I going to respond to this? In sales, it's like this rejection, this rejection, this rejection. And the better, if this is, you want the brainchild to this group to continue on past you, it's equipping the people so that they can then see that as well. And so having people go to their strengths, yes, but that's also, you can develop that as well. And so but having, like, again, finding out, like, being
So
able
do
to
you guys
clearly,
know how to implement what Teddy's talking about? Like the fastest, easiest way to implement that probably is.
Not sure.
Have him
Teddy.
do it.
Um, Probably more than that. Did you say have him do it?
Yeah.
Have Teddy do it?
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Um, I don't even know what to do with that. Do you have any suggestions, Teddy?
with what part of that?
Anything that Luke said?
Um, I mean, I guess I would say, but if I could do it, then anybody else could be able to do it too. So if you're
So,
giving me that confidence, then that's the confidence you should have in yourself and your team. And that's if I was to say like that's the lack of confidence about that, lack of consistency, continuity, I don't know what term to use, but that's what I'm sensing. And if I can like try and get you guys to think and how to get you guys so that you're, reading the same book, maybe in the same chapter, you don't always have to be on the same page. But allowing you guys to have that because then as your leadership, I mean, you can have decentralized leadership, but the whoever is kind of overseeing, helping guide the group is still the leadership about it. So what occurs at the meeting can be separate from the leadership. And then as people come in, you said there could be other people added. Some people may move away and whatnot. And so it's like, but if you teach the principles for it and the concepts, then it's become something where that gets in. If you have that and you're modeling it, all of that gets learned even quicker then.
so, so are you familiar with the term, over humble?
Don't think so.
So has anybody ever said that you're too humble, Teddy?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, very few people have ever had that said to them. And so, it's the unconscious competence is what it is. So when you say, again, I don't disagree with people because I think that's arrogant to do, because I think that I'm saying what I'm saying I understand what they're saying. Shoot, they don't even understand what they're saying. They really don't. And so, so overconfidence. So when you say, well, if you can do it, anybody can do it. I'm not saying I disagree with you, but you might be in a level 4, you might be unconsciously competent. You might be, over humble in that situation. But I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying there might be elements that you're not seeing.
And I would say that's probably true too. But I think if I was to say it's one thing, it's just I have a confidence with speaking to at least to a degree and possibly better than some of the group. And that's, I mean, I don't know the answer to that because I chuckle because she doesn't like the attention, but she's a strong speaker. So it was really kind of funny today with that. But my thought is that if I don't really know the group and if I've expressed it maybe a little more clearly, then it's just like, but I guess if it's your group, that's the thoughtfulness you could have for that. And sometimes we get bogged down with all the other information and it's what's like the baseline question. So if you had to give, what's your 60-second blurb on the purpose of the group? What's the 60-second blurb of how does the group function? And that's maybe getting it too simple. But, those are things where from a sales point and from people coming so that they can know when you can get it clearly, concisely down to something like that. And it's kind of coming consistently from those who are helping to, host the meeting or, guide the meeting, at least to start, then those are the things that breed the confidence and the comfort for other people then to be like, oh, well, I'll ask this and oh, I'll ask that. Again, not knowing what other people's expertise are, it's like, well, I'm not going to voice it because if then it'd be like, or have it be like, well, that you find that's a problem. So they don't know. Again, this is where I would, from outside looking in, if you want people coming back, it would be develop the relationship and then allow the communication of the group and allow them to see over a period of a few meetings how really everybody does have a chance of input. But then you have to find out, well, how do we get people to have those? And so if you have in the multiple tables with questions at each one that are, and you lead by example. So having the seasoned people who have attended quite a few times and have, a bit more vested interest in the group, have them start, well, I'm kind of struggling with this. And we went over this last week. And, I haven't had a chance to really try it. I still trying to do this. Then, then they start seeing by example, and then they might be able to bring, you get somebody who day one maybe puts forth a significant concern of theirs.
So Teddy shared this twice. Did that help you all? by him sharing it twice?
Not me, because starting with the relationship hasn't worked so far for us. We need something that catches the eye that interests them to come back, not just the relationship.
So Elaine is a similar personality than I am. And so she and I are going to see the world in a naturally similar way. And so what she's saying, it's not wrong, but it's very different than what Teddy is saying. And what Teddy's saying is not wrong either. So there's different people, there's different people in having different needs. So I think what it would require, what I think the thing that would do is to make this work, to execute what Teddy's saying, what we've talked about today. What we've talked about today to execute it, probably what it would take is the core group, showing up a half an hour early and staying. I don't know if I'm saying staying a half an hour late. I'm saying that there needs to be a prep before, and then there needs to be a debrief afterwards. And if you don't do the debrief right away, you risk a lot. And so the challenge is some people stay around quite a while. We could say, hey, this is when the debrief is going to happen. And then we just make the debrief happen at that time. So if we say 12 or 12:30 or 1 or whatever, and so everybody knows, the core group knows, I need to be there a half an hour early. I need to be there a half an hour later, so we can go over and execute what we've talked about doing. And in flawless thinking, it's the debrief after the thing where there's protocols on doing all of that. So that's going to take up more of our time, so that's an extra hour a month. That's an extra hour a month that we're going to need to go ahead and invest into it. Questions, Elaine, or your thoughts?
No, I like the fact of having the questions of the previous month and just kind of go over that, but go over it as a whole, not really call anybody out personally as to who had the question. And then if we get new questions, make sure that nobody's called out on their individual question or individual challenges that each one has. We just discuss it as a big group.
So I think what Elaine is saying is that we come up with maybe the questions, but make sure that they can't be traced back to a specific individual. So we make sure that, we may tweak them or change them if it's specific. And then we might put little numbers beside them and say here, and categorize them and say, hey, here, this question about time has come up 10 times. This one's come up 3 times, whatever. So that's interesting. Anything else, Elaine, that you have?
Be good if we had some of the white papers on hand that were the common questions, like maybe questions on communication, things about time, something like that. If we had some of those on hand where we could hand them out that day, and then have people follow up on them the next week, see what they got out of it, and that type of thing.
Nice. Anything else you got?
I think that's it for now.
Nice. Luke, anything you got?
Nope.
Kenny, anything
Don't
you
think
got?
so.
Do you guys want to meet with Teddy on Wednesday the 5th at 5 o'clock? And Teddy, are you available on Wednesday?
I'll have to check work to see if I'm house supervisor that day. Wednesday the 5th at 5 o'clock, you said?
Yeah.
I'll have to look at my schedule and I'll let you know pretty quick.
Okay. Sounds good. So what we'll do is we'll do a tentative Wednesday at 5 o'clock, and we'll record that one just like we did this one. So if other people join or aren't able to be there, they can listen to all of this and they can get up to speed without Teddy or myself or anybody having to share. Just say, hey, watch that original one. And that will help everybody kind of be on the same page and move in the same direction. Teddy, thanks so much. Really appreciate your investment of time and expertise into this. I think this has been really helpful, so appreciate it.
Okay, I appreciate it too. And thank you guys for taking the time. And I hope you find it beneficial.
Yep, we absolutely do. Thank you. Have a blessed weekend.
You too. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.